Hello chess fans! I finally hit 1,000 subscribers and thus we're going to be doing a Q&A. So I'm going to be answering any questions that you left on my community tab, and hopefully when we hit another subscriber milestone, I'll be able to do this again with more questions. So let's get into the first question. Okay, the first question is your approach different when you play OTB against FM strength players or higher? Have you learned a lot from them? So really, I've only played one player that's FM strength or higher over the board, which is Aman Hamilton. You can check out the video in the information tab. But I've also played some players in Nova Scotia who I think are probably around FM strength, and I had one draw. So my record against people who I consider FM strength or higher is 1 draw and 2 losses. So not the worst result in the world, but I hope to get a better result than that one day. So one thing I say I can learn from them is they are very resilient. So they always find some tricky way to get you. Especially with my game against Aman, we can see that the whole time it was just pretty equal. I was playing a pretty equal game. We got into opposite colored bishops in a rook endgame, and he grinded me down. And I think that's what I call the GM difference. The ability to win this position that I swear it looks so drawn. And even the player in Nova Scotia, I was in this drawn rook endgame, and he still managed to beat me, while the time we drew, I just made it as complicated as possible. So I would say the way that you beat these players, what I've learned from this, is by making the position chaos. A GM might be able to positionally outplay you no matter what, because that's not that difficult to do considering that we are just amateur players. But if the position gets absolutely wild, they're more likely to make mistakes, and I think that's what you should try to do against higher rated players. You should try to make the position crazy, and even if you lose, let's say they outcalculate you, okay, they're a higher rated player, that's bound to happen, but the chances of you winning, the chances of you getting a draw are much higher when you try to go for that chaos, when you take it straight to them and try to win. So against FM strength players, I think the best way to try to win is chaos. But they've also taught me that sometimes it's not always easy to follow the advice you know. Sometimes you get nervous against these players, and it's pretty natural when you're against a strong player to be nervous. So I would say take a few seconds, breathe, don't be intimidated by your opponent, and try to make the game as chaotic as possible. So yeah, let's get into the next question. Okay, so the next question is, what steps did you take to go from 2000 to 2200? So yeah, currently I'm a 2200 rated CFC player, and it took me around 2-ish years to get to that level from 2000. So I would say there's a lot of things I learned. So there's a few things that you have to do. So when you get to 2200, you have to be able to beat these 2000 rated players consistently, and you have to be able to beat these 1900 players more like 80% of the time, and 1800 players you have to beat 100% of the time. So how do you do that? Because these players are players that I was just not that long in the class, and these are strong players. So the first thing you have to do is develop an opening repertoire. And you also, when you get to 2200 at the club level, you kind of have a target on your back. You have everyone aiming for you. So you have to keep your opening repertoire flexible. So the way I would say you do this is try to play as much blitz games as possible. And don't always play what you know, because you want to get experience in as many different positions as possible. Let's say your opponent prepares for you for like 6 hours and they get this position you've never seen before. You want to be able to see that position over the board and be able to play it yourself. So the way you do this is by playing a lot of blitz, getting your exposed to a lot of different positions, and generally then your opening principles and middle game principles should be very solid. So I would say the best thing to do is just to play blitz. And if you're looking for sort of a better experience, I would recommend playing rapid, but it is sort of a time commitment, and also rapid is just less fun. Blitz is more fun in my opinion. And the final thing you have to do is you have to try to be able to win every position. It doesn't matter how drawn the position is. At the end of the day, if your opponent plays perfect, as a human, most likely the game is going to be a draw, as we can see at the GM level with most games being a draw. But the difference between maybe a 2000 and a 2200 is a 2000 will simply just accept that draw. Okay, I'm against a 2000 rated opponent. We're both playing like 8 center pawn. I have to get the draw. The 2200 opponent will be like, oh, okay, we're just playing exchange French. I have an equal position. I can't let this draw happen. I have to win at all costs. And that type of mentality is what gets you to 2200. If you have to win at all costs, you're going to try everything to win. Now, don't take on too much risk when doing so. Like if you're always trying to win and you just play some risky gambit when the position is completely equal, that's not going to do you anything. But you always have to try to create some imbalances, some chances, anything, so that you can beat your opponent. And that's how a GM beat me. So yeah, let's get into the next question. Okay, so now we have more of a relatable question, I guess. So is there any good openings for black around 1000 that aren't for a knight's game? So in my repertoire, I recommend to play the Four Knights game as black. And why do I recommend this? The idea is that when you are 1,000, most of the time the games aren't really decided by who plays the best opening, who memorizes the most lines. It's just usually a one move blunder or a one move tactic that can end the game. And this is my experience of being 1,000 at some point, and also I've coached many players past this 1,000 level. And so the reason why I say the Four Knights game is the best way to play is because it's the most natural. Without knowing any of the theory whatsoever, you can play the position pretty much perfectly like a GM would. And you cannot make tactical blunders much more difficult. Now, if you're looking for anything that's not the Four Knights game, I honestly say that you should stick with E5, but maybe play a Petrov, though even that I would say probably not. So I would simply just stick with the Four Knights game, and I think it's a highly dangerous weapon until at least 2,000. So if you want me to give a good rating, a good opening for black around 1,000 that aren't the Four Knights game, I can't really help you there because I think that any other opening is going to be more confusing. It's going to be less stable than the Four Knights game, and I think it's best by the test proven for beginners to play the Four Knights game. So let's move on to the next question. Okay, so we have Pretty Huge Jazz asking a question: what is the best opening that isn't the London for someone who is doggy poo poo? So first off, you're probably not doggy poo poo. Everyone starts somewhere, and especially with chess, it's just how much time you put into it. That's what you're going to get back out of it. So your rating is going to go up if you put time into it, and your rating will go down if I guess you don't put time into it. So I'm glad that you say that isn't the London. I think the London is a big beginner trap, I think, because you pretty much only get experience with one type of opening, and you just play that all the time. Yes, you might know the London better than anyone else, but the second that, I don't know, I play a move order that you can't play the London against, then you're in big trouble because you're like, oh, I only know the London. I have to play the London every time. And I think you make a lot of mistakes then. So I think London is a very bad choice, and I'm glad that you've said that we don't want to play the London. So what's the best opening? I have my recommendations on my channel, but obviously you don't want to hear that from me because you're asking this question. So my general recommendations for if you are under, let's say 1,400 online, I'd say my general recommendation is to probably just avoid theory. Just play as much blitz as possible and play as much rapid games as possible. Rapid games are obviously better, but if you only have time for blitz, that's also good. No bullet though. Bullet is not chess. And just play as many as possible, and you'll learn a lot of the ideas. You'll learn a lot of tactical ideas. Also, honestly, just watch YouTube videos on openings, and you'll probably learn a lot of things from there. You don't necessarily have to play them, and I honestly would recommend most of the creators only look at traps, which I don't think are very good. But yeah, you don't have to learn all the openings. You don't have to memorize all the openings. I'd say just honestly, depends on your level, but if you're above 1,400, just pick one opening, like just play E4 and then play some familiar setup, like play the Grand Prix, play the Vienna maybe. Or if you're below 1,400, at that point, openings don't really matter, so you can pretty much do whatever you want, and you should be able to just win most games even without knowing any openings. So yeah, for generally, if you don't want to check out my opening repertoires on my channel, which I think are great, and I will link them in the cards, if you don't want to check those out, then I would say that you don't really need to learn theory, and it's honestly not that big a part of chess until you get to a very high level. So yeah, let's go into the next question. Yeah, so actually I can't find the last question, but the last question was how do you move the knight? And you do that by moving it 2 in one direction and 1 in a direction perpendicular to the last direction moved. And it can jump over pieces, meaning that despite any pieces being within those 3 squares that it's moved, it can go over them. And yeah, that's pretty much how the knight moves. So yeah. Thank you guys for 1,000 subscribers. If you could subscribe if you're not already subscribed, that would be very much appreciated. This has been a big goal for me to hit 1,000 subscribers as someone who started YouTube like not a long time ago, at least like 2-3 years ago. 1,000 is a lot of people, and I don't think that that's appreciated enough. Even if people have like 10,000, 100,000 subscribers, I think even seeing 1,000 is just very nice, and everyone wants to learn chess, especially on this channel, and the fact that you guys are here is just so nice. So yeah, it's the biggest compliment I have that 1,000 people have decided to subscribe to me and want to see what I make about chess and want to learn from me. So yeah, thank you everyone for subscribing to the channel, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.